Hi, I'm Brian E. Denton, author of the book A Year of War and Peace and the poetry collection Inspiration. Welcome to my channel. This video is another video in a series of videos I'm doing on Dante's Divine Comedy. I'm reading through the entire epic poem at a rate of 3 cantos, or chapters, per week, and I'm doing this along with Baylor University's 100 Days of Dante Project, where they're reading at the same pace and doing the same thing. I think it's a great project, and it inspired these videos that I'm doing. Now, for old viewers or viewers that have been with me since the beginning, I'd just like to apologize. I'm releasing the videos this week in the evening rather than in the mornings. And the reason I'm releasing them in the evenings rather than the mornings is that this past weekend, instead of working on my Dante, I opted instead to watch a lot of football and also Netflix's new vampire property, Midnight Mass, which I thought was really good. You all should check it out. Aside from the monologues, I think it had a lot to say. Just in addition to being wildly entertaining, it had a lot to say about the perils of the secularization of faith practice. So go ahead and check that out. I think it's really good. It moved me. I liked it a lot. And with that, I'd also like to remind viewers that I'm aiming to get 150 subscribers to the channel by the end of September. At the time of recording, we're at 144, so with your help, I'm sure we can get to 150, and I thank you in advance for that. So, if you're a new viewer and you like what you watch, I encourage you to please like this video and also subscribe to the channel. And with all that, let's get right into it. Dante's Inferno, Canto 9. We open with Dante wearing his pallor again, and Virgil doesn't look too much better. We're not told whether Virgil's face is turning a certain color, but we are told that he has to compose himself before he speaks to Dante again. So whatever the opposite of trouble in paradise is, that's where we're at now with our two heroes. In fact, Virgil starts out today's canto by stumbling over his words. He stops and starts as if, he's worrying about something very intensely. He starts to say that they must win this battle to get into Dis, or collects his thoughts, and then he quickly changes the subject and says that, divine help is on the way, so we got nothing to worry about. Dante the Pilgrim notes this hesitation in Virgil's voice, and so he asks him, has anyone from Limbo, the first circle of hell, ever penetrated this deeply into hell before? Virgil tells him that, yes, indeed, once he himself ran an errand for Ericto down to hell to swoop up one of the souls from the circle of Judas. So yeah, don't worry about it. As it turns out, though, there's actually plenty to worry about, because just after he says this, the 3 Furies show up. Not a good sign. It's never a good sign when 3 hellish, blood-stained demonic entities show up. And then things get even worse, because the Furies tell the 2 travelers that Medusa is going to show up, and she will turn Dante the Pilgrim into stone. Uh-oh. At this point, Virgil, wise man, tells Dante that he needs to turn around and shut his eyes, because if he looks at Medusa, he will turn to stone. And it's quite hard, pun intended, to complete a journey if you're turned into stone. To guard against this awful fate, Dante turns and closes his eyes. But that's not enough, at least to Virgil's estimation, because Virgil also covers Dante's eyes. Then Dante the poet, for only the second time in the poem so far, addresses us, the readers, directly. And he says that we have to consider the teaching found hidden beneath this veil of strange verses. So pay attention. Now, as Dante the Pilgrim's eyes are covered, he can't see, obviously, but he can still hear. And what he hears is a vicious storm all of a sudden enter and beat relentlessly upon the iron gates of Dis. Shortly after this, Virgil releases his covering of Dante's eyes, and Dante looks out and sees the dispersal of all the demonic entities guarding the city of Dis, the Furies, all of them, the angels that are there, and he compares this to frogs fleeing a snake within a lake. The cause of all this demonic flurry is in fact a heavenly angel that has come down to reprimand the city of Dis for daring to stand in the way of this divinely mandated journey of Virgil and Dante's. So now our 2 heroes are finally allowed into the city of Dis, and they go in, and with this they enter the 6th ring of hell. And right away, Dante, looking around, he notices that there's this collection of tombs, and all these tombs are glowing with a sick red heat. And so he asks Virgil, who do these tombs belong to? And Virgil answers him, these are the tombs of the heretics. And the 2 heroes turn right, continuing on their journey, and bringing this canto's adventure to an end. Let's start off today by talking about Dante and Virgil. Both of them are scared. And this is probably the most important takeaway in terms of character from Canto 9. Both of these characters are scared. Now, Dante the Pilgrim, of course, we're accustomed to him being scared. This dude's weeping, passing out, crying, wailing, almost the entire length of the poem so far. But Virgil, this man's never been scared before. He's been uber confident in the success of the journey, but not so today. And he's worried for a very legitimate reason. For the first time in the poem, there is a legitimate threat to the safety of Dante and Virgil. This is, of course, the threat from the Furies, but also, most importantly, Medusa, who could turn Dante into stone. So the important thing to consider in terms of character here in this canto is that the stakes are raised. There is an actual threat to Dante the Pilgrim. Another character to consider from this canto is, of course, Ericto. And Ericto is a woman, and she was the one who tasked Virgil to come down to the deepest regions of hell to swoop up someone from the circle of Judas. Now, Ericto is once again Dante the poet using a character from the classical pagan literature in his own Christian poem. And in the classical pagan literature, Ericto was a Thessalian witch. The curious thing to note about Dante's use of Ericto in this poem is that it's totally novel. There is no analog in the classical literature of Ericto diving down into the depths of hell in order to swoop up someone else. This is a totally novel use from Dante. So it's like Dante the poet is out here still doing his work remixing classical pagan literature for Christian purposes. You know, he's out there on the ones and twos spinning Christian themes over classical pagan tracks. Finally, in terms of characters, it's worth saying something about the heretics that we find in the tombs at the end. Now, it's another set of characters that are unnamed by Dante the poet, but I think he's doing something here by his inclusion of them in this canto. First, the text indicates that these are above-ground sarcophagi. The dead here are not buried underground. And I think this is true because of the references made in the poem to the ancient Roman cemeteries at Arles and Pola. So then the first thing to note about these tombs is that they're made of stone. Again, we have this hard material. The hardness of the stone of the tombs is pretty much the same as the hardness of the iron gates to the city of Dis. And once again, we have Dante the poet telling us, reminding us through metaphor and symbolism, that the sins being punished in the city of Dis are the sins of hardness, the hardness of the human heart. That's what caused these people to sin, who are going to be found in the city of Dis. Indeed, hearsay can be viewed as the hardness of the human intellect. And while we're talking about the human intellect, if that is indeed what is going on here with the tombs, then perhaps the tombs can be read as human reason's proclivity for engaging in rationalization of false beliefs. This, of course, entraps or entombs the human mind. Anyone familiar with the work of Daniel Kahneman, particularly his book Thinking Fast and Slow, highly recommended, will have plenty to think about this canto in terms of these tombs and the various human cognitive biases that plague the human mind. Now, maybe the most important theme to consider in Canto 9 is Dante's second use of the apostrophe. This is where he addresses the readers of sound intellect in lines 61 through 63 to consider the hidden meaning behind his strange verses. What are we to make of this? Is Dante the poet asking us to pay close attention to what has come before, or to pay close attention to what is to come after? If Dante means for us to look forward, well then, we're not there yet, so we just have to maintain a critical and careful reading of the text. But if he's asking us to look back, is he asking us to look back at the entirety of the poem so far, up to this point? Everything previous to the city of Dis? Are we supposed to contemplate what happened with the neutral angels, what happened in limbo, the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth rings of hell? Or does he just want us to contemplate what has happened immediately, the issue with the Furies and Medusa? Is this what Dante the poet wants us to think about? Or was he talking about Virgil's covering of Dante's eyes? If this is what he wants us to look at, is he trying to say, like Odysseus with the sirens, that we cannot rely on our own will alone to resist temptation? That we need help to do so? Or could this act of Virgil covering Dante's eyes be read in conjunction with what happens immediately after it? Now, I like this. Think about it. Virgil is someone who, as we've discussed before, can be said to represent human reason and humanism in the poem. And what he's doing here is he's temporarily blinding Dante the Pilgrim. And while Dante the Pilgrim is temporarily blinded, A divine being descends down and clears the way for the two heroes. So what Dante the poet could be saying here is that, though wondrous and full of great utility, human reason might very well be insufficient in blinding us to the truth of Christian metaphysics. It could be precluding us from seeing the truth. Now, certainly Dante the Pilgrim, he sees the effects of the divine angel coming down to clear the path for the two heroes. But he only sees the result. He doesn't see the arrival of the angel because Virgil, human reason, is temporarily blinding him. Sounds like a discussion for down in the comments below. Let me know what you think. Finally, one last thing that I'd like to note before we conclude this section of the video is that you will see at the very end of this canto that our two heroes turn right as they continue on in their journey. And this is very rare. For if you've been a careful reader and you've been noting the directionality that our characters take, they are always down in the Inferno moving leftward. They're moving left all the time. In fact, I only think that they turn right twice in this entire poem. And I'm not quite sure what this means, but it is a pattern that I've noticed. And also, in the Purgatorial, you'll notice that the two characters move in the opposite direction. They'll be moving right throughout almost the entirety of that poem. So let me know what you think about that down in the comments below. For me, it's just another beautiful instance of Dante the craftsman as poet. The first takeaway from Canto 9 is to quote Paul Atreides, "Fear is the mind killer." That is to say, as this canto shows, that often in life, the things that we worry will happen often do not come to pass. And so therefore, we should move through life fearlessly. Just look at our characters. Dante, for instance, he's always been upset. He's always passing out, he's always crying. And in fact, like we said before, in this canto, he's got his pallor back on, so he's terrified. Virgil also is upset in this canto. He doesn't want to move on. They're thinking about turning their backs on their goal, which is getting into the city of Dis. Or at least they're hesitant that they can even do it, because they're suffering from fear. Why? Why are they fearful? They're fearful of what could happen. They have a fear of potentialities, nothing that is real or true. The Furies could stop them. Medusa could show up and turn them to stone. But these fears are not real. They only seem real because Virgil and Dante believe that they are. So the lesson I take from this canto is that we should never allow fear to direct our action in life, because our fears are often completely unjustified. For instance, when I first learned about Baylor University's 100 Days of Dante Project, the idea for these videos popped up in my mind immediately, because I love the Divine Comedy. I love thinking about the Divine Comedy, and I love sharing my enthusiasm for the Divine Comedy with others. But then my fear kicked in. My fear told me that you can't make these videos. You're going to look stupid, and people are going to laugh at you. And the reason you're going to look stupid and people are going to laugh at you is because they're going to compare you, this guy from Queens with no PhD, to the bevy of information that's already available on the internet concerning the Divine Comedy, produced by great scholars and deep thinkers, someone like you. And Baylor University, of course, is only going to contribute to the wealth of that knowledge because they're going to be using great scholars to discuss the Divine Comedy. So who are you to make these videos? But, summoning my inner Canto 9, I didn't listen to my fears. I started making these videos. And I started out with, I think, like 30 subscribers, and I'm almost up to my goal of 150, which is great. But most importantly, there are a few people down in the comments below, thank you very much, who are contributing on a daily basis. And they're offering their own insights, which in turn enrich my own reading of the poem. So, as far as I'm concerned, so far, this project, at least my contribution to it, has been a resounding success, and I'm very happy with it, and I hope to continue with it. Deo volente. So in your own life, when you want to do something and fear kicks in and tells you that you can't do it, or you shouldn't do it because you'll look stupid, or you're not good enough, don't listen to that fear. Remember this canto. And in addition, remember this great passage from the classic novel Robinson Crusoe from Daniel Defoe. Oh, what ridiculous resolution men take when possessed with fear. It deprives them of the use of those means which reason offers for their relief. Fear of danger is 10,000 times more terrifying than danger itself when apparent to the eyes. And we find the burden of anxiety greater, by much, than the evil which we are anxious about. My final takeaway for this canto will be short and sweet, and it's for the Christian readers of this poem. The takeaway is this. One of the lessons from this canto is that even in one's darkest moments, when one feels the most furthest away from God, one must not lose one's faith. Consider that both Dante and Virgil understand that their journey is mandated from on high. And yet even then, when things get rough for them, as they do in this canto, they despond. They get very upset and they start to worry. Dante wears his pallor again. Even Virgil gets upset. We keep saying this, but it bears repeating. And it's their lack of faith which paralyzes them. And what is it that terrifies them so much? The Furies? The arrival of Medusa, who can turn them into stone for all eternity? Come on, who among us hasn't dealt with that before? But seriously, the Furies of our life, the Medusas of our life, these are just mere impediments. These are just obstacles in our faith journey. Like Dante and Virgil, we find our path littered with all these obstacles, all these stumbling blocks. But it's no reason to halt, no reason to allow ourselves to be paralyzed by fear. In order to keep going when confronted by these terrifying impediments, I like to recall the words of one of the noble pagans who is unnamed, but I'm sure he was up there in limbo. And that man, of course, is Epictetus. And this is what he had to say about allowing impediments to paralyze us with fear. Sickness is an impediment to the body, but not to the faculty of choice, unless that faculty itself wishes to be one. Lameness is an impediment to one's leg, but not to the faculty of choice. And say the same to yourself with regard to everything that befalls you, for you will find it to be an impediment to something else, but not to yourself. All right, that concludes my video for Canto 9 of Dante's Inferno. Again, I'm sorry for publishing this late. Usually I do it in the mornings, but this time I'm doing it in the evenings. And the Wednesday and the Friday videos will also probably be published in the evenings as well. And as I said before, this is because I binge watched the entirety of Midnight Mass on Netflix, which you should go check out. Let me know what you think about down in the comments. And also watched a bunch of football. Go Liverpool, go New York Football Giants, even though you break my heart every week. But with that, I would just like to say thanks again for watching, and if this is your first time visiting the channel, please consider liking this video and also subscribing to the channel. It would really help me out. I've set myself the goal of getting to 150 subscribers by the end of September. That's later this week, and I think we can get there because we have 144 subscribers as it stands right now at the time of recording this video. But more importantly than liking the video or subscribing to the channel is getting a conversation going about the poem. So I invite you to let me know your opinions not only on this canto, but on the poem in general. And let me know down in the comments below. But I'd also like to ask you to consider a few questions that I have about this canto. Number 1. In lines 61 through 63, Dante the poet asked the readers of sound intellect, and that's you and me, baby, to consider the hidden meanings behind his strange verses. What do you think he means by this? Do you think he means what happened beforehand? What is to happen shortly? What's your opinion? Further, what's your opinion on my opinion, as outlined in the video? Number 2, how excited are you to finally enter the city of Dis? I know I'm excited. Do you think that the punishments that are going to occur down here are more intense because the sins themselves are more intense? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Number 3, let's take this opportunity because we're entering a new region of hell to kind of do a summary. Let me know what you think about the poem so far. And remember, aside from leaving comments down below, you can also contact me on Twitter at Brian E. Denton. And aside from that, know that we're going to be releasing these videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And like I said, these will be in the evenings this week, but next week we'll get back to releasing them in the early morning. So with that, our next video is going to be released on Wednesday. Until then, take care of yourselves and others. We open with Dante wailing. I guess he's wailing.